What's going on, everyone? Nick or Catalyst here. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing well. So today's video is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a few weeks now, but wasn't quite sure how to format this video because videos on the time to kill and patch 5.2 have been done to death at this point, and I think especially for me, it's very well known that I strongly dislike the weapon balance changes along with all the other changes brought to Battlefield 5 over the past 2 months. So a big buzzword for DICE concerning feedback for Battlefield 5 has been objective. They want objective feedback on the time to kill changes instead of angry players just screaming at them, although I'm not quite sure how you don't hear the outcry from the community and not view that as sufficient feedback unless you have your heads in the sand and choose not to hear it. I think that's something important that you need to look at introspectively. But with all that being said, I'm going to try and mostly take my feelings on the time to kill out of the equation for this video and focus on objectively stating whether or not these time to kill changes and weapon changes succeeded. If you are looking for a stats heavy video comparing and contrasting every weapon before and after the 5.2 update to see what's different, what's changed, I'm sorry, this isn't going to be that kind of video as that's not really my MO, but being a competitive player, I tend to look at some of the more mental aspects of the game, player tendencies, cause and effect, and game analysis. Now before we get started, I want to quickly say a few disclaimers about this video, the first of which being, I would have stopped playing Battlefield 5 a long time ago if it weren't for my audience and my teammates. They are the reason I keep pushing on in this game. Secondly, there are some of you who are going to watch this video and say, I like this guy, and I agree with them. There are also some of you who don't know me, who aren't going to like this video because you are tired of people bitching about the time to kill, or if you watched my videos before, you are tired of me bitching about the time to kill. You're going to tell me, if I don't like it, to just shut up and stop playing it. Well, admittedly to that statement, there is a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome with Battlefield 5, but beyond that, it's not that easy for me. I'm not a weekend gamer who plays 4 hours on the weekends, and my life wouldn't be affected by just quitting the game and spending time elsewhere. No, I have monetary investment and I have an obligation to fans as well, and that goes for all content creators for this game. So the next time you tell someone to just quit and give up concerning a game like this, take some time to think about the fact that maybe the same rules don't apply to them as they apply to you. Which is why I feel horrible for the content creators that are vastly more popular than myself, of who really rely on this game to earn a living. There is more at stake than just time. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the video. I think the best place to start is to question why all of this needed to be done in the first place. What was DICE's reasoning for all of this? I'm fairly sure that most of you have seen Get Good Guy's video on the true reasons behind the changes, and if not, go and watch it on his channel. There will be a link in the description. It's a very good and insightful video. You'll be showing up late to the party, but still, it's good to watch and realize that not everything is what it seems. So the real reason that DICE implemented these changes was to cater to newer players and boost Christmas sales, although I'm not sure who would have seen the year-old dumpster fire that is Battlefield 5 and say, I want that for Christmas, Mom. But moving on, that for all intents and purposes is the real reason why these changes happened, but I'm going to play devil's advocate today and go with DICE's explanation for the changes, and that explanation was that DICE was trying to increase the usage of certain weapons and add a wider variety of gun usage in the game by shifting the meta and creating an experience that is less punishing, among other things. So shutting the real reason for these changes out of our minds for a second, let's move forward thinking that these changes were to increase variety in usage of weapons. Have these changes succeeded in doing so? This may come as a total surprise to you, but no. Objectively, these changes haven't worked in the slightest, and here's why. One thing that is very apparent to me in all of these changes is that there is a real lack of understanding by DICE on the optimal engagement distances in Battlefield 5. Most of your engagements are going to occur at around 10 to 15 meters, and I put some examples on your screen here from the practice range because it's kind of surprising how far away 15 meters actually is, but as I was saying, your typical engagement distance is about 10 to 15 meters, especially in game modes like Breakthrough, Team Deathmatch, and Grand Operations that restrict the scale of the playable area to only fragments of the map at a time. I would say that your optimal engagement distance caps out at around 30 to 40 meters, and these engagement distances are definitely more frequent in Conquest, but even still, you aren't going to be in a gunfight outside of 40 meters often, unless you're using a sniper rifle or purposely playing away from the objectives. Now, there is no way to prove any of this because that is only data that DICE would have, but with around 700 hours into the game at this point, and I think those with more hours than me would agree with this, I'd wager a lot of my engagements occur at 10 to 15 meters, maybe branching up to 20 meters, and I also have gunfights frequently at the 25 to 40 meters range because I play a lot of Conquest. If you take a look at simthic.com, which is a website that posts weapon stats and algorithms, you'll see that a lot of weapons start to experience damage drop-off at around 15 meters. You might hear that and say, well, that's actually good because everything does its max damage at about the same distance, but that's only one side of the coin. There are so many factors in determining the outcome of a gunfight, including how healthy the player is the player prone, how good is the player, but most importantly, how fast is the rate of fire of that weapon, and this is where there is a huge problem with this time to kill in update 5.2. The meta class is a class that is designed to be the best class at those close quarter combat ranges, anywhere from 1 to 15 meters, which, as I've said, is the range that most of your gunfights will occur in. So if you've been playing the game and recognizing that you've been getting killed a lot by people using meta weapons, that would be why. Submachine guns are balanced to be the best at CQC, and with these time to kill changes effectively nerfing long-range combat, DICE has more or less sandwiched everyone further into fighting close-quarter combat gunfights, of which, as I've said, are dominated by the meta class. The meta class was a crutch class before the 5.2 update, as it was, and it was the only class that allowed you to heal repeatedly and almost acted as a type of buffed auto-regeneration. But now that, as I said, range combat has been heavily nerfed, apart from the fact that your engagement distances typically occur at the range in which the meta class is the strongest anyway, SMGs and the meta class are borderline overpowered now, and that goes without mentioning the pocket MMG known as the Type 2A, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Before the 5.2 update, I can honestly say that every weapon class was viable, and there was a great duality to the gunplay. DMRs could pick you apart in 3 to 4 shots if you were out in the open, if you weren't careful, and skilled players could compete at the close ranges if they hit headshots. Likewise, SMGs could compete at ranges outside their intended range if the player had good aim and positioning. Perhaps I'm looking back on this with rose-tinted glasses because of the current state of the game, but I genuinely think that every weapon class had its niche and had its users. Of course, there were popular weapons such as the Tommy gun, the STG, and the Lewis gun, but I truly think that DICE were a couple of balancing changes away in that iteration of the time to kill from having a very balanced game. If, and only if, we are going by the goal which DICE claimed they had with the 5.2 changes, that goal being to create diversity in player weapon selection and increase the usage of certain guns, then that goal has totally failed. Instead, I think the opposite has happened. In my opinion, the meta as it is right now has the least variety of gun usage yet in the lifecycle of Battlefield 5. It's almost becoming worse than the Battlefield 5 beta in early 2018, in which the SCG was the only usable gun, and that was in a beta of which there were limited access to weapons anyway. Because long-range combat has been nerfed so badly, it's becoming frustrating rather than fun to use DMRs, and thus they have become for the most part not viable, and people would rather conform to using full auto weapons so that they can compete at closer ranges. The Recon class is the only class that has long-range capabilities and thus has received a massive buff, but that class has always been popular, and quite frankly, there is such a cult fascination and satisfaction with sniping that there is probably nothing that you could do to dissuade people from playing that class. The support class has basically turned itself into a hit marker machine, especially at longer ranges, and shotguns have become the only way to compete in this new meta, apart from a few standout weapons. Using a submachine gun under 720 rounds per minute will put you at a distinct disadvantage, so in essence, the 5.2 patch update has introduced us to a meta in which rate of fire reigns supreme over anything else, and there is no greater example of this than the newly introduced Type 2A, a weapon that is the most popular in the game at the moment, and it's also the most broken gun in the game at the moment. I have gone from wanting to play with and use every single weapon in the game to restricting myself to just a few weapons per class, if even that many, because everything else is either not fun to use or not good enough to compete with the meta. After playing with the 5.2 update for a few months now, as everyone else has, I think we can comfortably deem this meta the rate of fire meta. The issue is that with these balancing changes, DICE is funneling as many players as possible into close quarters combat, of which the meta class is used as a crutch, because that's one of two viable ways to perform well in the game unless you are a skilled player that can hit headshots, which most people aren't. It's not a meta that I personally find enjoyable. This is all to say that this meta does not work. A meta in which the rate of fire determines your success instead of your actual skill at the game determining your success is a bad meta. And that's what we have in Battlefield 5 as of right now. If you use a weapon under 720 rounds per minute, you are at a big disadvantage because, as we've discussed, the most common engagement distance in the game occurs right in the medic class's wheelhouse, and there are minimal weapons in other classes that can compete in those same ranges depending on variables such as skill and health. The Type 2A is a weapon that abuses the fact that ranged combat is non-existent and the other medic weapons are vastly underpowered in comparison to it. Actually, the Type 2A is a lie in of itself as it pertains to Battlefield 5. The Type 2A in real life is a weapon that actually only fired at 800 rounds per minute and not the 1000 rounds per minute that it fires at in Battlefield 5. I don't know whether this was an oversight or DICE decided to pack on an extra 200 rounds per minute just for the memes, but because of this, the gun has no weaknesses. The gun has controllable recoil once you get used to it, great hip fire, the highest rate of fire in the game, and a 50 round mag specialization if you want it. It legitimately has no weaknesses. How you release a weapon like this after claiming people are churning from your game because they're dying too quickly, I've got no idea. It's the pinnacle of imbalance and quite frankly needs to be removed or reworked. This type of behavior is something that has been going on quietly for quite a while, unfortunately. Battlefield has been in this state of which DICE has been frequently making the game more casual friendly since the beginning of Battlefield 1, and this casualization is only really being noticed now because the game is quite frankly not good, whereas Battlefield 1 was a more polished and thought out product. Easy to use, high rate of fire weapons coming late in the game's life cycle, like the Burton LMG, the Annihilator Trench, the reworked SMG-08, bayonet charges, snap-on aim assist, dumbed-down flight controls, random bullet deviation, 3D spotting. Does any of this sound familiar to you? It's all catering to a casual player base that ends up at odds with the veteran community. That isn't to say that Battlefield is not a casual game, because it is, but one of the best parts about Battlefield was that it used to blur the lines between offering a hardcore shooter experience and a fun, casual one. That blend is gone, and DICE is further continuing to sacrifice and kill its loyal player base in exchange for a player base that won't question anything when they decide to make dumbfounding decisions that ruin the company's reputation and the franchise's legacy. Now, there are some things I do want to talk to you about before we wrap up this video, the first of which being some of you might be thinking to yourselves that my opinion may be tainted because I play very aggressively and therefore I'm going to run into more people using medic weapons and they're going to be using high rate of fire weapons, and of course it's going to be in the optimal engagement distance and blah 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 blah. Basically, you're going to think I'm biased in my assessment, and yes, you're right to a certain degree. I do play aggressively, my gameplay is very fast, and I'm a player that likes to outsmart you and beat you, but that doesn't invalidate my opinion because I do play every class and I play every weapon, changing my playstyle to whatever is needed to perform to the best of my ability with that weapon, whether it means running around like a chicken with my head cut off or playing more passively and holding an angle, whatever is required of me. The second thing I want to address is an argument that a lot of the people that are advocating for this time to kill frequently use, and I kind of want to tell you why it's bullshit. People have been arguing that a longer time to kill takes more skill to play, and I could not disagree more with that statement. Oh, those who hit headshots will be more skillful and therefore better in this meta because it takes longer to kill somebody and you need to hit headshots. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, gents, but hitting headshots in any meta will make you skillful, so that doesn't really apply here. And it doesn't really matter. A longer time to kill does not make the game more skillful due to the fact that it artificially increases your margin of error. You can get away with more things and you don't learn from those mistakes. You can make 100 mistakes and still live with a longer time to kill. But with a time to kill like Battlefield 5 had pre-patch 5.2, you were punished for making mistakes, and that, in the end, is what's going to make you a better player. Less hand-holding means more improvement as a player, and just because you die quickly doesn't mean that that kill was easy for your opponent. Experience speaks volumes. The faster time to kill rewards players that have better aim, quicker reaction time, and better positioning. In other words, actual skill. That's why if you go back and look at my channel and look at the videos from the last year or so, I talk so much about positioning, movement, and understanding map knowledge. But In conclusion, has the 5.2 patch update succeeded? In my opinion, no it hasn't. Instead of creating a greater variety in weapon usage, it's only scrambled the weapons into a meta in which fewer weapons are viable, much less fun, and there are only a few weapons that are predominantly played in the game, most of them high rate of fire close range weapons, and it's become this way because ranged combat has been nerfed so heavily that you need to play either as a sniper at long ranges or just conform and play as a medic in close quarters combat to be effective most of the time, which a lot of players are choosing the latter. The medic class has become even more of a crutch than it was before, and this rate of fire meta is overall just not fun to play. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I'm curious to know what you all thought. Do you think these changes succeeded? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd like to thank you all for 4,000 subscribers. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your support. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you hit the like button. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on post notifications if you haven't done so already. If you are interested in becoming a channel member, you can click the join button on your desktop or click the link in the description. Follow me on Twitter, join my Discord. Those links are in the description as well. Thank you to all my tier 3 and 4 members, and thank you all for watching. My name is Nick or Catalyst, and I will see you all another time.
Is the future. Evolution. This is the future.